Hey, I'm Jesse. Let's have a devotion from a bit of a different angle today. A couple of you have asked me, what is that thing on the wall behind you? So here's my answer. It is a map of the world's history and the Bible's authorship and events all coinciding with each other. So it starts off the beginning of time. We see Adam, we see Eve, we see Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the progenitors of the proto-races and their descendants thereafter, and it goes on into leave space for the future. There's a little bit of space for me to write whatever happens next. So here's the year 2000, and at the center of the map, at its baseline, is Christ. There's one inaccuracy here, and that is that the Gregorian calendar, it has no year 0. It actually has a year 1. But for the sake of a plumb line, it begins right here with the birth of Christ. Here's where we are within the context of the history of the world so far. It's all taking place around the middle of the map, and you can see who was emperor of Rome at the time. This is Claudius. Claudius was appointed in the year 41, and you could tell that he had a pretty strong anti-Semitic sentiment, right? Anti-Semitic meaning you are opposed to these guys, the descendants of Shem. See the similarity between the name Shem and the abbreviation Sem, as in Semite. And so this anti-Semitism of Claudius caused one of his first edicts to be to outlaw the gathering of the Jews. And in the year 49, he would oust the Jews from Rome altogether. Now, that really stunk for the people of Rome at the time, the Jews in Rome at the time. But one upside is that Priscilla and Aquila flee to Corinth, where they meet Paul. And then they become the ones who encourage Apollos, and they will even risk their lives to assist Paul. So it's because of that emperor that these people are named in the text. So that kind of gives a glimpse of where we fit within world history. Let's continue in the text. We're in Acts chapter 19, verse 21. After these events, Paul resolved by the Spirit to pass through Macedonia and Achaia and go to Jerusalem. After I've been there, he said, it is necessary for me to see Rome as well. Okay, pause right there, because that's going to become a recurring theme. You're going to hear more about this as the text progresses, because churches are going to be alarmed at Paul saying he's going to Rome, because they say, like, that's a death sentence for you. We know that Claudius is on the throne. He does not have a particularly favorable view of Christians. The guy who's going to come after him is Nero, who's going to burn huge portions of Rome and blame it on the Christians, executing Christians publicly. Don't go to Rome, Paul. That's a death sentence. Paul will be executed, possibly beheaded, stay in Mamertine prison in Rome, where he writes his final letters. But we just saw him name his future and his future plans as he tests and approves God's will for his own life. As after sending to Macedonia 2 of those who assisted him, Timothy and Erastus, possibly the same Erastus named in Romans chapter 16, he himself stayed in Asia for a while. About that time, there was a major disturbance about the way. That's us, Christians. For a person named Demetrius, a silversmith who made silver shrines of Artemis, provided a great deal of business for the craftsmen. When he had assembled them, as well as the workers engaged in this type of business, he said, men, you know that our prosperity is derived from this business. You see and hear that not only in Ephesus, but in almost all of Asia, this man Paul has persuaded and misled a considerable number of people by saying that gods made by hand are not gods. Not only do we run a risk that our business may be discredited, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis may be despised and her magnificence come to the verge of ruin, the very one all of Asia and the world worship. So this guy Demetrius is speaking to the craftsmen. Imagine like a really incensed union meeting. And the guy who's the guy who's their target is this Paul guy, who in Demetrius' words is misleading the world. You can see his view of his own context as a microcosm as though it were the whole world. He overestimates how far spread the worship of Artemis really was. But to be fair, the temple to Artemis in the heart of Ephesus was one of the wonders of the ancient world. It was tremendous. It was unthinkable that this great temple would come crumbling down. Can you imagine any kind of similar context to that? Any kind of modern day marvel that it's unthinkable that it would come crumbling down. That's Demetrius' way of thinking. And he's he's trying to discredit Paul on the basis of the disruption that it would provide to his business model as he works with these silversmiths and these craftsmen, and also on the basis of, and by the way, people would bring the beautiful temple of Artemis to ruin. That's what's unthinkable to him. When we look at Demetrius, we can see some of our own words sometimes. If you would consider your own financial ruin something that is not worth the cost of the advancement of the gospel, then you're echoing Demetrius's sentiment. Anything that we would be unwilling to sacrifice for the advancement of the gospel is actually Lord in our lives. Demetrius was decrying Paul for doing this, and this is exactly what we can do when we at times put financial prosperity ahead of the advancement of the gospel. Watch for this in our own world. Watch for the echoes of Demetrius in modern day culture. Watch for this when you hear something come out of DC. I've been to DC several times, and I hear echoes of this same kind of Demetrius-like language. Watch for this in entertainment. People from Hollywood think that what they live in is a microcosm that represents the whole world. Sorry, we don't all worship Artemis, Demetrius. You're in your own world. You're largely thinking about prosperity. You're not thinking about the advancement of truth. This is something that is echoed in modern day culture. So as you hear journalists, as you take in entertainment, I pray that you guard your heart, but also want you to spot the echoes of Demetrius in our culture today. There's nothing new. This is the book of Acts. It's still happening today. Let's go live it out together. Let's be on the side of Paul, because Paul would turn out to be right, not Demetrius. Are you ready? Go.